Hi again, this is Knives Sports and Adventures. Today I want to talk about Leanboard Setup. Okay, so these are unconventional trucks and they do require some unconventional setup. The biggest thing about these trucks for setting them up is the little nose here on the Leanboard decks. They all have this for a very important reason. It's not just because it looks cool. You'll notice right here, there's a little dent, okay? And that's because what determines how far these trucks turn is that the deck, this little nose thing, actually bottoms out on the swing arm of the truck, and that is what stops the deck from leaning over. If you mount these on the end of the deck, which I tried here, you can see, there's no stop built into the trucks. Like a reverse kingpin truck, when you lean it over, eventually the bushings squish together enough that they just run out of squish and the truck stops leaning. That doesn't happen on these trucks. There's no stop built into the end of the truck until it's way too late. If you put them on the end hanging off, you will actually lean your board so far over that the rail will drag the ground and stop you immediately. So you have to have this kind of a nose. Probably for this truck, drop down or drop through decks like this are going to be your best bet. You might be able to find a pintail deck that works, but that's going to be a pretty narrow pintail. I'm sure somebody will figure it out. But if you had a wider pintail, it would limit your turning ability. So be careful of that when you set them up. The other thing about these is getting the spacing right, okay? So if you think about it, when you're leaning over and that's stopping you from turning on the deck, the wider your deck here and the closer it sits down to the board, the less your trucks will turn because it'll bottom out sooner, okay? So if you have a really wide deck and it's thick, it's going to hit these really soon and you're not going to be able to turn very much. On this deck, you can see it's an aluminum deck, so it's very thin, okay? But it has these aluminum I-beams that run the length of the deck, okay? I actually cut off the outer one here to let my board get closer here and have it bottom out on this I-beam, which is, coincidentally, about the same width as this deck, where it bottoms out on the swing arm, okay? So that gives me about the same turn that it would have had on a factory Leanboard deck, and it works really nicely. The other thing is I have a big rubber piece in here, like a half-inch rubber shock pad, because they don't have bushings, even though they have the nice soft durometer wheels, they don't ride as smooth as a regular reverse kingpin truck. So you would think they would ride smoother with the bigger wheels, but my 85 millimeter 75A seismic speed vents actually ride smoother than these 101 millimeter 76A wheels, because of just the way that you got a massive piece of steel here and no bushings in the middle. So that's the main thing with these trucks. You really have to get the width of the board right, and spacing it up higher doesn't really help you a whole lot because of the way the geometry of these trucks work. The width of your board here actually matters a whole lot more than the height up and down here. I experimented with spacing it up a lot higher. A, it just made my board higher, which I didn't want, and B, it didn't limit the turn, or didn't improve the turning radius as much as I thought it would. Cutting out the part of the deck and effectively making the part that contacts my wheels or the swing arm narrower made a lot bigger difference in how much it turned and made it a much better setup. The other thing about these trucks is wheel bite, okay? So you can mount these wheels a lot closer to your deck in the cutouts than you can with a normal reverse kingpin truck, because they don't get as much closer as the reverse kingpin truck does. They do, however, get a little bit closer. So if I'm looking straight down on this and I push it over, it does get closer to the deck. but not nearly as much as a reverse kingpin truck would. So these are actually mounted inside. You can see the regular truck would be up here. These are mounted back here. Shortens up the wheelbase, makes it turn a little quicker. Works out nicely. And that short wheel gap, I think, looks pretty cool. So that's the basics of getting your lean board truck set up on a regular deck.